Well, welcome to the Symphony in the Flint Hills Gallery. Good to see you all this morning. I'm Mike Stout. I'm the board chair of the nonprofit organization that conducts the Symphony in the Flint Hills activities. And this year, as it turns out, my family and my brother Joe, his family, were also the landowners for this property where we tried to have the symphony. You may know that our mission is to heighten knowledge and appreciation of the Flint Hills tallgrass prairie. It's a unique culture and landscape, and we want to do all we can to encourage people to understand and appreciate it. We do this with various activities throughout the year, but our major activity is our signature event is this event that we had intended. It was scheduled for Saturday on June 15th, or it could have gone over to Sunday as a rain day on June the 16th. As you all know, this hasn't been a perfect year for weather. Most of the farmers and ranchers in this area can tell you a little more about that if you want to hear about it. But I can say that with all the problems in our planning and our preparation, we were ready to go Friday night and for the symphony to be the next day. And then things kind of changed on us. And Christy, you want to tell them a little bit about that?
First, thank you for coming and thank you for your patience. You all, I'm sure, know this because many of you have been involved in other activities with our organization in the past, but our number one priority for the past few days has been the safety of our crews and staff as we've continued to clean up the event site. So that's really been a focus of ours. And some of that work that we've carried out would ordinarily have been done by volunteers on event day, but for safety reasons, we had to wait on some of that. As you all know, canceling this year's signature event wasn't a decision we took lightly. In fact, we expect that the cancellation will have some financial repercussions for the organization. As you know, we're different, very different from many other festival organizations you may have worked with in the past, especially for-profit festival organizations. And because tickets only cover a third of our costs, we rely on the generosity of donors, event day sales, and the help of 700 volunteers to make ends meet. By the time we were forced to cancel the event, we already had incurred all of our site-related expenses, from commissioning artwork and music to building roads and trails to erecting a tent village. And because we're waiting on final bills from our vendors, we're still assessing financial impact, and I think Mike will talk a little bit more about that. I want to share a little bit of the timeline just to clarify, because I know there's been a lot of discussion online. In the early morning hours of June 15th, we sustained severe damage to Irma's pasture and bazaar, the site of our signature event. The severe weather event was later identified by the National Weather Service as a microburst, which we've all learned now is a column of air that can produce winds up to 100 miles per hour. And that explained why the weather event destroyed a number of tents. The microburst flattened depending on how you count them, 4 major event tents. It included our ticketing, our Patreon sponsor tent, food, our main food tent, and art and retail. 3 of these semi-permanent structures had wind ratings of 65 miles per hour. And we've actually changed our planning over the years. In the last couple of years, we've consolidated some of our operations to have more tents with higher wind ratings because we operate in a pasture. 2 of the tents, so patron tent and also main food tent, had capacities to hold more than 1,000 people each. And those 2 were not your average tents. I know many of you here have seen these in person, but a couple of them measured 100 by 200 feet. So we don't put flimsy tents up in the middle of the prairie. The event was postponed Saturday morning, and our audience was notified. Our executive committee was notified at 7:12 a.m. Our board of directors notified about our plans for postponement at 7:19, and by 7:32, we had an alert out on Eventbrite to our ticket holders. At the same time, we also alerted our partners at the Kansas City Symphony. As Saturday wore on, I mean, our initial plan, of course, was to postpone to our rain date. And when we think about rain date, we think, you know, hey, it might be too wet to park people. We don't think about the kinds of damage that we had. But as Saturday wore on, the extent of the damage became clear. The tents, including the two that measured approximately 100 by 200, hadn't just blown over. They'd been ripped to shreds. So we're optimists, and we want to put on this event. We are as heartbroken as anybody. We were really excited to share the prairie with folks this year. In my mind, I was thinking, hey, we have lots of people out here. We might be able to make this thing work. If the tents have gone down, we might be able to put them back up. But it was more than just blown over. They'd been ripped to shreds. And it was the worst the tent company had seen in 20 years. And then we also learned on Saturday, although we knew this, but the chances continued to increase, that another major storm was on the horizon. Once that we understood that a Sunday event wasn't possible without jeopardizing guest safety and incurring damage to the prairie, we were forced to make the heartbreaking decision to cancel. During the night of June 16th, another storm produced enough rain on the already saturated ground of the site that event parking in a pasture would have been prohibited. And I just want to explain that even if we were able to park people on Sunday, that we would have had to have an event without food service, beverage service, patron tent, ticket gate was gone. So major tents related to our operation were destroyed. In addition to the financial implications, the decision to cancel was particularly heartbreaking because all of the special programming we'd planned for our Ad Astra theme, and as a culmination of a 3-year-long arts initiative called Jumpstar. This included education programs that were years in the making, and our education committee had been working on for many, many years. The premiere of music composed by Jarek Bischoff, a first ever prairie performance of the Osage Ballet, and other artistic surprises. This is considered a bucket list event for many, and the impact of canceling it has been upsetting for everyone, including our ticket holders, sponsors, vendors, site crews, staff, board, and 600 plus volunteers who work year-round to make this happen. I'm going to turn back over to Mike, and then we'll talk a little bit about our plans for ticket holders.
We operate a pretty lean, mean organization. It's a nonprofit. We have 6 staff members that handle our programming for all year, and a lot of preparation that goes into this event. We have dozens of vendors that we have contracted for various portions of this event that we had scheduled for June 15th. And we have 700 approximately really good volunteers who come out on event day and make the thing happen. So there's a lot of people but on the event day, but the actual staffing is pretty lean. Our annual budget is always in the neighborhood of $1.4 million. Most of that money does go to the event, to this event. Of that money, the income or the way we produce the money is about $450,000, roughly, of that comes from the sale of the general admission tickets. Then there's some revenue that's produced by the event in the form of merchandise sales, food sales, beverage sales, and that sort of thing, art sales at the event. So there's some additional revenues that come in at the event, but the bulk of the money that comes to the Symphony in the Flint Hills are from our sponsors, patrons, foundations, others who give to this money because they believe in our mission and they believe that we are able to carry it out. We don't keep around extra money. We use it all to accomplish our mission during the year. Now, we will have some savings. Some of the vendors that we were able to stop in time might be able to reduce their bills to us. I hope so. We haven't got all that billing information in yet. But for example, a caterer, you know, when a caterer comes planning to serve food to 6,000 or 7,000 people and finds out they aren't going to be there, they suffer some losses too, and we're responsible to them for some of their losses. We have a stop loss on that of 25,000, and I hope we don't use that much of it, but we have to contribute to their efforts if that occurs. And of course, in addition, we would have expected to make maybe 20,000 on the sale of those goods that the caterer and others were providing. So we owe money in addition to what we've already spent to the companies to get this event in place. And we don't have all those bills in. But, and of course, we obviously know we're going to be missing the revenue, but I believe we have money to pay all of the bills that we will have from this event, and we can continue with the preparation and the planning of our family-oriented event, which is mostly fun and music instruction at Woodfest at Camp Wood in September. That's our next activity, and either bring your children and come for that, or you may, and certainly in my case, you'd have to grab some grandchildren or neighbors' kids or something to come and participate in our event in September. We've been contacted by many of our sponsors and patrons. They're with us for next year. They understand the risk that we have and the value of our mission. So we will have a signature event next year, God willing. I want to also tell you that we're sorry. I frankly didn't know what a microburst was until this happened. And if we can figure out a way that we could provide part of the education and the activities that Christy was describing that we intended to have at this event in some form for some of our patrons over the coming year, we can figure out how to do it, why we'll do it. But you know, we also have to be planning with that same staff our signature event for next year. But we'll do the best we can. I think Christy has a couple more things to say, but let me comment before that. Christy told us in January that this was her last event, and she's done a great job for us. She's had 6 events, successful events for us, and whatever you call this thing, I guess a disaster that we just went through. When she told us in January, we had a search for a replacement, and her replacement, Leslie Von Holden, is standing at the back of the room ready to take over the responsibility here the 1st of July, and I think wondering what she's getting into with this organization. In short, though, I do just want you to know we're sorry, but we will straighten it out. We will get our bills paid. We will continue with our programming activities for the next year, and we'll be back with a signature event in June of 2020. Thank you.
So I just want to address a couple things. We talked a little bit about loss of income, and I know we've had a lot of communication, not only with our patrons and sponsors who are with us year after year, but also with ticket holders. As you all know, our tickets are non-refundable, and they've been identified as such in our ticketing platform and elsewhere. We do feel a responsibility, though, to honor those folks who participated with us as ticket holders and didn't get the fun party out of it. Our plan is to offer first exclusive access for 2019 ticket holders to purchase tickets for the 2020 signature event on June 13th, 2020. And we'll start ticket sales for those folks on July 1. And then we'll also be working to offer Flint Hills experiences throughout the year as a way to honor those ticket holders as well. We've had a lot of questions as well about insurance. We, of course, have insurance that covers our property. Those of you who've been on site will be glad to know we also have insurance that covers you and your safety if something happens to you on the event site, and also coverage for our volunteers. That said, we don't have what you would consider conventional event insurance. Event insurance often covers a span of time for conventional events that might be in a paved area with sidewalks, concrete, and it covers a span of time that includes the event. For what we do, that span of time where we could have damage or sustain damage that would cause us to cancel, there's a 10-day setup period ahead of time, and then there's cleanup after. So it's more than just the event time itself. The cost for event insurance or traditional event insurance that you may be familiar with other festivals exceeds what our losses would be. A premium for that exceeds what our losses would be. So we've made the decision over, evaluating over many years that's insurance that we wouldn't carry. We carry a lot of insurance. We carry liability insurance, and again, for our property. The bulk of the damage that was done on site, fortunately it happened when no one was there. The bulk of the damage that happened on the site was to the tents, and we have some pictures here that kind of show, this is last year's event, we have a picture that shows what the site looked like when it was near completion as far as setup, and then what it looked like after it sustained damage. The bulk of the damage that happened really happened to the property of the tent company, and they carry insurance to cover those expenses. But we don't have insurance that's going to cover our costs or loss of revenue in order to refund tickets, and that's why we've always had a policy with GA tickets that they're non-refundable. I guess those are the main. I do want to say a special thanks to some folks who are here and some who aren't. First, our crews aren't here, they're still on site, and they have worked so hard. We have Ray Barrett, who is heading up some of our crews, was on the site at 5 a.m. After this microburst. He was the first one there. I want to thank, again, our new director, Leslie Von Holten, who, welcome aboard, Leslie, who has just been a rock through this. We're really grateful for that. And also the rest of the staff who, again, just pours their hearts and souls into planning this thing year after year. And the payoff is the smiling faces of our audience on event day. And didn't get that this year, but we have a great team, and these are the folks you want on board when you have a crisis. Marquee Event Rentals, again, they sustain the most damage. They're still on the site today. Harvest Productions, which is our site coordination folks, who've been great partners for many years, and of course the Kansas City Symphony, who've been our partners since 2006. We mentioned sponsors and patrons. I know that we have Becky here from the Trustler Foundation, our major founding sponsors, and BNSF, our major presenting sponsors, who've been on board with us from the beginning as well. So we would be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
You mentioned that all the vendors had said that they're pretty much on board going forward, but are you concerned that because of some of the issues with the tickets being non-refundable, some people being upset about that your attendance is going to drop next year?
I'd say that's certainly a possibility, especially because we've had 13 successful years in a row, and to have one, it creates an expectation. But we have a 93% success rate. Most of the folks that we've talked to are really excited to come back, and I've been surprised at the number of folks. We had this great article in Smithsonian Magazine. We had a little blurb in Martha Stewart Living, and so people from all over the country and world came for the first time this year, and we got to talk to a lot of those folks because they came into the gallery to see the artwork, and they were very positive, and many of them gave us big hugs and said, we'll be back next year. So most of the folks who are interested in what we do are really interested because of our mission, and they understand that part of our mission has to do with the landscape and nature, and we don't control nature.
Refund policy as far as if you cancel instead of, because I think typically If somebody gets tickets to a concert and the performance is canceled, they generally get a refund. And, you know,
Our policy's clear. It's the same policy too that we've had from the beginning in 2006. It's clear on the website, it's clear at our ticketing platform, and it's on the tickets as well, so that is.
Yeah, it isn't a contractual thing. I mean, that clearly says that we don't have it. It's a shame because there was so much educational content in art and music that was going to be present in this thing. It's really a shame that we weren't able to put it on. I wish there was some way we could provide part of that or some of that in some way to some people over the year if we can figure out how to do it, why we would. But as far as refunding money that we don't have and we said we weren't going to do, the answer is still no. We're not going to refund it. But I feel terrible that we weren't able to convey the information we hope to convey consistent with our mission on this event. I'm wishing there was some way, or hoping we can think of some way that we can either bundle up some of those speakers or do something that will enable us to convey some of that information. It's stuff you would want to know about the Flint Hills, and I wish there was a way we could get it to our audience. I don't know if we can figure out how to do it. This is pretty early after the event for us to be thinking about stuff like that. But if there's a way to do it, we'll try.
Yes.
Can you talk about when the decision was made to cancel and
Sure.
the process of alerting? I know you mentioned Eventbrite or something, but what's that process like once you need to alert?
You bet. So we alerted folks about the postponement on Saturday at 7:32, and I know there were already people, who were visiting from elsewhere, but people were in town. Our plan at that time was to postpone until we really assessed the damage and knew what we were facing. That morning, we had a meeting with our executive committee to talk about what that meant as far as postponement. And then we started contacting, after that meeting, we started contacting patrons and sponsors. So there was a notification that happened through our ticketing system that went automatically to ticket holders. We called patrons and sponsors throughout that morning through a phone bank. I had a meeting on site at 1:30 on Saturday, and I had been on site at 6 a.m. I think I was the second person up there, and they were still assessing, and we had to bring in some tent people to assess not only the damage to the tents that had collapsed, but the tents that were still standing to see what kind of safety concerns there were. At the meeting at 1:30, there was a discussion with our site coordinators and also with representatives from our major partners, including Kansas City Symphony. After that discussion, we had a recommendation that went back to the executive committee, and the recommendation was that at that time we realized that a postponement wasn't gonna work. We were going to have to cancel. We weren't gonna be able to have an event on Sunday. So that's kind of how the process happened. And then as soon as we made that decision, there was a cancellation notice that went out on Eventbrite to our ticket holders.
Do you know how Eventbrite sends out that notification? Is it an email? Is it a text message? How does that message go out to people?
Email and text. Okay. Thank you.
And what time was the cancellation notice sent out?
The alert from Eventbrite was 4:25 p.m. on Saturday, and there was a lot of discussion. We've had years where it's wet weather, and we don't know if we can do it or not, and we wait. There was a lot of discussion about, do we wait until Sunday? By the time we had the meeting on 1:30 on Saturday afternoon, and we began discussing, after that, really more assessment came in. we thought it was really important to alert our ticket holders as soon as possible. So we made a decision. We could take a chance, but we knew that this huge storm was coming in and our efforts were going to be futile. And so we decided to, and I know some people were frustrated because they got the postponement on the same day as they got the cancellation, but we decided to alert people as soon as possible because we knew it affected people's plans. We talked to a lot of people who were looking into, reserving hotel rooms and that sort of thing, and we didn't want to make it more of an issue than it needed to be.
I think some people have been a little bit confused or possibly a little bit upset about the fact that it was called, the money they paid for the ticket was called a donation. They felt maybe it was a set price in that regard, and that's why they felt maybe a refund was due. How do you kind of answer that, those statements? So
we are a 501c3. We're not tax advisors. I think that's something that folks need to discuss with tax advisors to see how that plays out. We have lots of plans in place for weather events, and we have a PR plan for delay, cancellation, and in general, I think that most of that language was developed with a rain event in mind, knowing that it might not be raining at event time, but if it's raining all night the night before and early that morning, we're not going to be able to park people in a pasture. And so I think the language in some of that standard wording was inclement weather until we really understood what had happened with the microburst. But that never, when we left the site Friday, actually when I left the site Thursday, they were a day ahead. The site setup was great. I was feeling great. Friday, everything was ready to roll, and never imagined that something, especially, we knew we might have some weather, we knew we might have some wind, but the tents have a 65 mile per hour wind rating. Never occurred to me that after we had everything ready to go, and that we could still technically park people, that we would have a problem until I got up to the site to see the damage. So it is a little different than, again, we plan for inclement weather, but a microburst is just a rare freak thing. Apparently they can produce wind, it's like a column of wind, and it can produce winds up to 100 miles an hour.
I don't know, how do you prepare for something like that? It almost sounds surreal to me. How could you have a storm that hit just a very small area of the pasture? It didn't even damage the shell where the Symphony would perform. There were still chairs sitting down there where the seats would be for the Symphony. And up on the hill where the tents were, they ended up looking like that. I don't, we're waiting for somebody to tell us how you plan for something like that, because obviously we're not smart enough to do it.
Well, I will say that, we have an amazing emergency management crew, and they meet throughout the year. And even though our events are held throughout the Flint Hills in different locations, it's a lot of the same folks year after year. And so they're on board. We have a clear emergency management plan with them. Thank goodness nobody was on the site. A lot of it has to do with if people are on the site. We also have a relationship with the National Weather Service, and we began meeting with them months in advance as well. They give us weather reports, and that's part of the reason that at the briefing on Saturday after we did the postponement, we knew the chances were really great that there was going to be another storm come through. And so with their advice, we were able to keep our audience safe rather than taking chances and getting everybody on site.
I'm sorry, Chris, a little bit. Our plan is essentially towards safety. I thought you were asking the question that was towards how do we prevent this, and I don't know how to do that. From a standpoint of safety, we didn't have anybody risk in this situation. We didn't at any point. But how to preserve the event under those circumstances is what I don't think we have an answer to.
I really appreciate everybody's coming, and we're happy to answer any more specific questions that you have after, and really looking forward to next year's event. Thank you.